کنفرانس در پارلمان اروپا بروکسل. سیاست جدید در قبال ایران با تمرکز بر مردم و مقاومت ایران. سخنرانی‌های نمایندگان پارلمان اروپا. خاویر سارسالخوس، رئیس کمیسیون آزادی‌های مدنی، عدالت و امور داخلی و عضو کنفرانس رؤسای کمیسیون‌ها. آرکادیوش مولارچیک، هماهنگ کننده کمیسیون خارجه در گروه محافظه کاران و رفرمیست ها ECR، عضو کمیسیون خارجه و زیر کمیسیون حقوق بشر. رؤسای عضو کمیسیون خارجه، وزیر دفاع لیتوانی 2008 تا 2012 و رئیس مجمع پارلمانی ناتو 2018 و ایزابل بنخومیا، عضو کمیسیون بودجه.
خاویر سارسالخوس: زنان ایران پیشگامان واقعی مقاومت هستند. نقش آنها در مبارزه برای یک ایران دموکراتیک و آزاد بنیادی است. شجاعت آنها بدون شک موتور محرک این تغییر است و به رسمیت شناختن آن وظیفه اخلاقی ماست. برای اتحادیه اروپا بازنگری کامل سیاست‌های خود در قبال ایران ضروری است. اینکه بگوییم هیچ جایگزینی برای رژیم آخوندها وجود ندارد نادرست و بسیار خطرناک است. یکی از پایه‌های بازنگری در سیاست‌های ما گنجاندن سپاه پاسداران در لیست سازمان‌های تروریستی است. اتحادیه اروپا باید این تلاش را هدایت کند و از پارلمان اروپا که به طور مکرر خواستار قرار دادن سپاه در لیست شده است پیروی کند. برنامه 10 ماده‌ای خانم رجوی، این پلتفرم سیاسی، مدنی و اجتماعی نمایانگر آینده است که ایرانیان آرزوی آن را دارند و باید پایه هر راه حل سیاسی باشد. مقاومت دموکراتیک ایران به رهبری خانم رجوی تنها پاسخ واقعی و مشروع به رژیم آخوندهاست.
Dear Mrs. Rajavi, esteemed authorities, distinguished colleagues and friends, dear Alejo, we are so happy to have you here again. It's an honor for me to be here today at this important event alongside Mrs. Maria Rajavi, a leader who has been and continues to be a beacon of hope and resistance against an oppressive regime, the regime of the Ayatollah in Iran. Her tireless struggle for a free and democratic Iran is an inspiration to us all. And we applaud her courage and determination, and we reaffirm our support for the legitimate resistance of the Iranian people represented by the National Council of Resistance of Iran. Now, dear friends, let me reflect on 3 points that I would like to single out of the current situation. First, the defense of a democratic Iran has become a matter of principle, not only for Iranians, but for the entire free world. In the context of an increasingly complex and dangerous region, the struggle for democratic values cannot be postponed or ignored. Iran, with its theocratic regime, represents a threat not only to the peace and stability of the region, but to the international community as a whole. Second important point, in my opinion, is the crucial role, the heroic role that Iranian women are playing in this struggle. And this is very bad news for the regime, I have to say. Iranian women are true pioneers of resistance. Their courage and their determination that we all have witnessed, their determination to take to the streets and defy a regime that oppresses them is beyond admiration. The role in the fight for democratic and free Iran is fundamental. And their bravery, no doubt, is the driving force behind this change, and acknowledging it is a moral duty for us all. Third important point is that under the regime of Ayatollahs, Iran has taken on a destabilizing role both regionally and globally, and that has become more than obvious. Intervention in Syria, support for terrorist groups in Yemen, Iraq, and Lebanon, and its constant defiance of the international community are just a few examples of its aggressive and expansionist policy. Iran not only threatens the stability of the region, but also endangers global security. So the European Union, we need a full review of our policy with regard to Iran. A full review that has to start by recalling what Mrs. Rajabi has just said. It's simply false, it's untrue, it's extremely dangerous to say that there is no alternative to Ayatollah's regime. That after all, the Ayatollah's regime is the evil we know. The Ayatollah's regime is not the evil we know. The Ayatollah's regime is just evil. The second important thing to remember when we approach this necessary, this indispensable review of our policy towards Iran is the failure itself. It's not only based on a false premise, but it's also leading to failure. And this failure is now, today, dramatically reflected in the fact that Iranian drones flying over European skies and attacking Ukraine. That's the image of failure. For all these reasons, the European Union must act now decisively. And we need more effective sanctions that truly penalize those who perpetuate this regime and its terrorist activities. Moreover, we must work closely with our international allies to confront the Iranian threat jointly. Iran's nuclear program is undoubtedly one of the most serious challenges of our time. Iran cannot continue to develop nuclear technologies for military purposes under the guise of a civilian program. We must make it clear that we will not tolerate the Iranian regime acquiring nuclear capabilities. A crucial step in this direction, and certainly one of the cornerstones of this review of our policy towards Iran, is the inclusion of Iran's Revolutionary Guard in the list of terrorist organizations. As you know, this organization is responsible for many of Iran's atrocities and destabilizing activities, must be identified and effectively confronted. It is urgent that the international community take this measure and the European Union lead this effort, following the lead of the European Parliament, which has repeatedly called for the listing of Iran's Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. The European Union must adopt a clear and strategic stance regarding the Iranian crisis. It's our duty as defenders of human rights and democracy to uphold the values that unite us and to act decisively against a regime that systematically violates these principles. The European Union must be strong and coherent voice in the fight for the freedom of peoples and cannot allow itself to become complicit in a regime that oppresses, tortures, and kills its own people. Finally, and to summarize what Iran should be, I want to recall the 10 points of Mrs. Rajavi. This political, civic, social platform that represents the future that Iranians aspire to and should form the basis of any political solution. We are talking about an Iran with rejection of absolute clerical rule, the affirmation of people's sovereignty, freedom of speech and the press, dissolution of oppressive institutions, commitment to human rights, separation of religion and state, gender equality and rights, independent and fair judiciary, ethnic autonomy and justice, environmental protection and peace. So we are talking about an Iran free, democratic, in which the dignity of every man and woman is upheld and defended. The goal is clear: a democratic, secular, free Iran based on human rights that is not only possible, but necessary for the peace and the stability of the entire region. The democratic resistance of Iran, led by Mrs. Rajavi's vision, is, let's again say, the only realistic and legitimate response to the regime of the Ayatollahs. The time to act is now. The people of Iran and the world deserve a future of freedom and democracy. We cannot stand idly by while the Iranian regime continues to oppress its people and threaten world peace. The European Union has the power and the responsibility to make a difference. And I'm confident that if we act with unity and determination, we can contribute to a free and democratic Iran and to a safer world for us all. So, Mrs. Rajavi, dear friends of the National Council for the Resistance of Iran, you can always count on us, the members of this House of the European Freedom. Thank you very much.
راسا یوکنویچینه توسعه قابلیت‌های اتمی توسط رژیم ایران که پیشاپیش از تروریسم، حمایت و هنجارهای بین‌المللی را نقض می‌کند، یک بمب ساعتی است که نه تنها خاورمیانه بلکه جهان را در معرض خطر قرار می‌دهد. اتحادیه اروپا باید اقدامات قوی‌تری انجام بدهد، از جمله قرار دادن سپاه پاسداران در لیست سیاه. با همکاری یکدیگر می توانیم برای آینده‌ای تلاش کنیم که مردم ایران بدون استبداد زندگی کنند و تهدید تسلیحات اتمی متوقف شود.
Thank you very much, dear Patras, Madam Rajavi, all dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes I think that we Lithuanians, those who can call ourselves freedom fighters, I am very proud to be in front of you here. And this conference today is a very important one. The destabilizing actions of the current regime in Iran represent a grave threat to peace and stability, not just within the region, but on a global scale. At the same time, the bravery of Iran's youth, particularly women, who risk their lives daily to resist this oppressive regime, is both inspiring and heartbreaking. Yet, we must do more. The solution is clear: an Iran free from the control of the current regime, which poses a threat not only to its own citizens, but to global peace, as I already mentioned. The regime's dangerous pursuit of nuclear weapons is an urgent issue that cannot be ignored. The development of nuclear capabilities by a regime that already sponsors terrorism and violates international norms is a ticking time bomb that endangers not only the Middle East, but the world. The European Union and the international community must act decisively. We must prioritize efforts to prevent Iran from obtaining nuclear weapons. It was already mentioned. Furthermore, the EU must take stronger action, including blacklisting the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which serves as the regime's enforcer. Together, we can and work towards a future where the Iranian people can live free from tyranny and the threat of nuclear weapons is stopped. And we must find our efforts inside political will to defend democracies as such globally. So don't be afraid. As Iranian young people and women are not afraid, sometimes I feel that some leaders in European capitals, or not only European, across the ocean as well, sometimes they are more afraid living in welfare to support by money or weapons those brave people than they are themselves fighting against terror, against dictatorships. So my message is, don't be afraid, and we will win.
آرکادیوش مولارچیک. نظرات من تأکید بر دیدگاه‌هایی است که پیشاپیش همواره اتخاذ شده است. ضرورت اتخاذ موضعی قاطع و سازش ناپذیر از سوی جهان غرب در برابر رژیم ایران و کمک به مردم شجاع ایران که خواهان تغییر رژیم هستند در تلاش‌هایشان برای حرکت به سوی دموکراسی و حفاظت از حقوق بشر.
Mr. President, Your Excellency, distinguished guests, dear friends. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of today's meeting for hosting this important event and for inviting us all to listen and comment on the situation in Iran. My comments amplify the views that are already commonly held, the need for the Western world to take a firm, uncompromising stance on Iran and to help the brave people in Iran who want regime change in their efforts to move towards democracy and protection of human rights. There are signs of hope. I encourage the EU starting work on classifying the Iranian Guard as a terrorist organization and identifying Iranian activity and influence in criminal networks in Europe. I'm also proud that the European Parliament is helping by hosting meetings like this to inform Europeans about what is happening in Iran. We can also take hope from the US, and I strongly believe that the President Donald Trump will once again adopt a strong US policy towards Iran. Any momentum created by the Western world should be used and multiplied to adopt an increasingly stronger position toward Iran and bring about change. We should support the Iranian people and they fight for democracy and the protection of the human rights, but the EU must show consistency. Without consistency, the EU cannot show strength, and the Iranian people are counting on the EU to be strong and resilient toward the current Iranian regime. Once again, I welcome the event today. I encourage more to take place to communicate the opposition to the Iranian regime, and I hope that the people of Iran join to the democratic world as soon as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
ایزابل بنخومئا. خانم رجوی، اینجا نمایندگانی از گروه‌های مختلف سیاسی حضور دارند و همه ما در دفاع از آزادی و دموکراسی برای ایران متحد شده ایم. می‌خواهم صدایم را برای جوانان ایران بلند کنم تا بدانند که تنها نیستند و ما اینجا در اروپا نیز برای آنها مبارزه خواهیم کرد. به ویژه برای دختران و زنان جوان ایران که نماد مبارزه برای حقوق برابر هستند.
Thank you very much. Madam Rajavi, welcome to the European Parliament. It's an honor to have you here. You are an example for all of us, for your fight and the leadership in the cause of freedom in Iran. So thank you for being here. Querido Alejo, es una alegría inmensa tenerte aquí después de que se cumple un año del terrible atentado, así que solo podemos dar gracias a Dios de que estés aquí con nosotros. Madam Rajavi, you have here a representation of members of different political groups, and we are all joined together in the defense of freedom and democracy for Iran. As many of my colleagues have said before, you are not alone in the fight for this cause, and it's essential that we at the European Parliament work together to raise our voice and to put pressure, to have as much pressure over the regime as possible. I want specifically to raise my voice for the young people in Iran, for those who have not known democracy and who have not known freedom, and for those who are courageously fighting for the cause of freedom, putting their lives at risk, for those young girls who decide to take risks, defending what we want here, what we have here in Europe and perhaps we don't value, which is the right to decide what we want to be and how we want to live our lives. So I want to raise my voice for the young people in Iran to let them know that they are not alone, that we'll keep fighting for them here as well in Europe, and specifically for the young girls and for the young women in Iran that are an example of the cause of equal rights. And again, thank you very much for being here.